Tiffany, whenever you're ready, you just start.
By the end of this debate, 2 people will have been killed by a firearm. 72.5% of firearms used in events of gun violence are handguns, according to a 2011 report. This is why we believe that in the United States, private ownership of handguns ought to be banned. The current right to own handguns should be rescinded for 3 main reasons. Firstly, handguns result in too many unnecessary deaths. Every day in the U.S., an average of 289 people are shot, and 86 of them die. More children under the age of 5 lost their lives due to a firearm than law enforcement officers in the line of duty in 2010. Additionally, half of all the juveniles murdered that year were killed by a firearm. The killing is becoming more of a problem now in the U.S., as evident through the fact that there were around 6 mass shootings a year from 2000 to 2006, but around 16 a year from 2007 to 2013, as stated in a study on shootings by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The list of statistics are never-ending, all highlighting the devastating fact that guns end too many lives in the U.S. Secondly, ownership of a handgun should not be considered a necessary right of self-defense, since they are hardly used by victims. A National Crime Victimization Survey reported that around 6 million non-fatal violent crimes occurred from 2007 to 2011. However, 99.2% of the cases, the victims didn't defend themselves with a gun. Additionally, if you compare Seattle and Vancouver, a citizen in Vancouver is 5 times less likely to be murdered by a firearm, since they have stricter gun control laws. Owning a handgun hardly benefits a person's safety at all. Therefore, owning one is an unnecessary risk to those around it. Lastly, stricter gun laws won't be as effective because legally owned guns are often stolen and used by criminals, and it's relatively easy for someone to buy them off of the black market. According to a study conducted by the Department of Justice, 230,000 guns are stolen a year in home burglaries or property crime, and 25,000 from gun dealers. These guns end up on the streets, fueling the black market further. According to a former ATF Assistant Director, Mike Bouchard, if you talk to any criminal, they can find a gun within an hour or 2. Cheaper guns that were stolen can be sold for $50. On the street, a typical good handgun will run you $200 to $300. The black market for guns is fueled largely by stolen property from people's homes. If citizens don't have handguns at home, the number of stolen guns will decrease, resulting in less guns on the street. The ownership of handguns is currently a common aspect of American society, and their negative effects on citizen lives are being overlooked by money. This is why we strongly agree with the resolution in the private ownership of handguns ought to be banned.
Thank you. Sorry guys, I'm trying to take notes, film, and time, so. Are you ready? Yeah?
The private ownership of handguns in the U.S. ought not to be banned. We need handguns for defense. 200,000 times a year in the U.S., women use handguns to protect themselves from sexual abuse, according to Northwestern University. According to an analysis of the data in 2000, states that implemented shall issue concealed carry laws reduced murders by 8.5%, rapes by 5%, aggravated assaults by 7%, and robbery by 3%. According to 2 different studies, one by Northwestern and one supervised by Bill Clinton, estimates of defensive gun uses per year are between 1.5 and 2.5 million. While according to the Bureau of Justice, the statistics on the number of crimes committed with firearms was only around 400,000. Guns are more often used to defend against a crime than to commit one. In 1982, when a town in Georgia passed a law requiring the heads of households to have guns in their homes, burglary went down by almost 90%. And with just one exception, every public mass shooting in the U.S. since 1950 has taken place where citizens are banned from carrying guns and therefore cannot defend themselves. It is our constitutional right to have guns. This country was created because men had the firepower to stand up against corruption, and we need to have that capability. Though revolutions are improbable, they are not impossible. In the future, if the U.S. is taking over or becomes a corrupt government, the citizens need to be able to fight back. There are also financial consequences to banning handguns. According to estimates from a study in Town Hall magazine, the combined size of the U.S. commercial gun and ammunition market totals around $32 billion in economic impact nationwide. There are 60,000 gun dealers in the U.S., and the average salary of a gun industry worker is $140,000 per year, according to First Research. Nearly 100,000 people are employed directly, while another 100,000 are employed indirectly. Banning handguns would cost the U.S. money and cost its citizens jobs. There are also plenty of countries to look to as examples that show that banning handguns does not make citizens safer. Switzerland has around 3 million firearms in a country of 8 million, according to Time magazine. And they only have 0.5 gun homicides per 100,000 citizens. On the other hand, the United Kingdom is an example of a country that has increased turmoil because they banned guns. According to the European Commission and United Nations, since banning guns in 1997, the recorded number of violent attacks has soared by 77% to 1.2 million in 2007. The UK has the second highest overall crime rate in the EU, a higher homicide rate than France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, and the UK has the fifth highest robbery rate in the EU. This is evidence that nations with strict gun control laws have substantially higher murder rates than those who don't. And it is impossible to get rid of all handguns if we ban them. Yes, they will still be available in the black market from the old handguns that were in the States and from international dealers. If you allow these guns to be on the black market and ban them, real citizens won't have access to guns and won't be able to defend themselves. It will be impossible for a criminal to have formidable opposition from citizens if you ban handguns.
Does anyone need prep time before the crossfire? How much do you want? 20 seconds sounds great. And you guys can talk to each other. Yeah. It's a team. That's 20 seconds. So who's crossing Tiffany? Who's presenting the first crossfire? Okay, so I think it's Tiffany, you're up there, I believe. Oh, you're up there, yeah. You have 4 minutes on the clock. Begin when you're ready.
So I guess my first question is, if there were no guns, how would you get them off the black market? Because, as you said, 25,000 handguns are in the black market, and as citizens or robbers, you said, can find a gun within an hour or two, how would you decrease that?
Well, first we need to start guns keep on ending up in the black market more because of the continuation of the theft from houses. So if you eliminate that, you're gonna stop the gun, adding the majority of the guns to the black market. And then from there it would be easier to start, have law enforcement focus more on, the black market. But the only way to end guns in the black market is to first stop the flow of guns into it. You can't stop it with, you can't end that without stopping the flow. So the only way to do that is to first ban handguns, which would decrease the amount, the 25,000 which are being stolen, and the so they don't end up in the black market, and then you can focus directly on that.
And then you said guns were not necessary, and you proved that out of the 6 million non-fatal crimes, 99.2% of the victims did not protect themselves with a gun. Why else are they not necessary?
Well, the main case for carrying a handgun, or, well, is, you know, you guys saying that it helps protect a person or helps deter crime or, you know, things like that is what you guys are saying. But if you, like the 99.2% of the crime that took place here, people didn't have handguns and it didn't end up like as a violent crime. They were unviolent crimes. And so they're able, it's not like you need a handgun with you all the time to feel safe. So that's mainly the, for when it comes to self-defense, that shows that that's sort of the main point that I don't know where we're going with this now.
I'll go on to the next thing. As you said, as universities and schools, with the banning of guns, how do you think that will affect the students who go there and the teachers from protecting themselves if there were another mass shooting?
Okay, well, in schools, the students and the teachers don't need to have a gun with them because schools have their own security. They have school security, and then that's what the police is for. Law enforcement is there in instances like this. So, and like I said, 99.2% of these incidents, people don't need to defend themselves with a gun. So it's not necessary for you to always carry around a gun with yourself to be safe. And carrying around a gun with you at a school won't end, you know, the threats of mass shootings, you know. So in this case, public places like this, it should be up to law enforcement and the police and like school security to protect the students in that case.
And then my last question is, would you promote the ban of handguns of just the citizens that are in that section, as in the teachers and students, or since that would be?
Go ahead, finish your question.
My question was, if are those people who are regulating the security of the schools, would they need to have their gun permitted by the government? Because if all ownership of handguns were banned.
Yeah, because this is privately owned. For them, that's their job. They're, you know, working for the government or
So you
working
would say
for it.
that
So
wouldn't be privately owned then, it would be
no,
different?
that would, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Cut.
So he's only supposed to ask her question?
Yes, yep, and then we crossfire the other way, yep, and then it happens again with the second speaker,
Okay.
yep. Anyone need prep time? Prep time? Con team,
Are we asking them?
hold on, con team, are you taking prep time?
Yes,
How long?
30 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
I don't ask that question. But we, UH is going, we're here right now, so then UH is going.
Who's going up for you guys?
Kendall.
Oh, for you.
And you're
No,
crossing
I was talking to him, but
Kendall.
UH is going for Kendall.
That's 30 seconds.
Alright.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, my first question is, you mentioned in your speech that
banning guns do not necessarily mean that the country is safer. And then you gave the examples of Switzerland and UK. But my question is, how do you address that in countries like Japan, where owning a gun is virtually impossible, and then pretty much nobody owns a gun, and then their firearm death rate is 2 to 4 per year, 2 to 4 people per year? How do you address that?
Well, Japan, how long have guns been banned in Japan? Do you know? It's okay if you don't know. It doesn't matter. Well, in America, guns have been legal for 300 years. So there are lots of guns around. And if you ban all the guns, there's still going to be lots of guns around. You can't possibly purge every single gun out of America. And so if you ban handguns, the good citizens, law-abiding citizens won't have handguns, and only the criminals who go into the black market, who can find these guns from other countries, or have the guns that they've kept and haven't given back to the government, they'll have guns and they'll be the ones killing people. So we can't possibly get down to 2 to 4 murders a year if we ban guns, because guns will still be out there.
But wouldn't banning guns help in the process of reducing murders?
I don't think so, because the people who could stop a mass shooter won't be able to have a gun. The people who could defend themselves in their home won't have a gun. But the criminals who go out and they find these guns, they will have guns.
But don't you think that because there are because there aren't severe gun control laws, wouldn't it make it easier for the criminals to get guns too?
If you keep guns legal, criminals will be, they'll be able to have guns, but so will normal citizens, and they'll be able to defend themselves. If a shooter comes into a building and he has a gun that he's bought legally or illegally, if a citizen can't have a gun, they can't possibly defend themselves. If a citizen can have a gun, they have a chance.
Okay. You also mentioned that the financial cost of banning guns, but how do you address the societal costs of not banning guns by reducing the tax revenues? Because poor people die and then they can't pay tax.
I don't think I understand the question.
So you said that because there are gun factories and then gun dealership, and that's part of the economy, but if you don't ban guns and then these mass murderings and homicides keep showing up, there will be people dying and then the tax revenue would decrease. How do you address the costs of that?
Decrease because there's not enough people paying taxes?
Because the tax revenue will reduce, not necessarily meaning that, but
Well,
it's just.
all the money that comes from the gun industry, they also pay taxes. Still have to pay tax to buy guns. So there's that can make up for it. I mean, obviously, wouldn't want to make up for it, because hopefully these mass shootings can stop as long as someone with a pistol can kill the mass shooter, and then that wouldn't happen. But I don't think there would be a huge drop in the tax revenue just because we continue having legal guns. I don't think there would be any massive drop.
I think that's it. Is that?
You still have
Oh.
40 seconds left.
Oh, okay. How do you address the situation of suicides, because those still involve criminals? If you ban guns, those suicide rates probably will reduce.
Well, suicide can happen with anything. So if you ban guns, people can still kill themselves. If you're really determined to kill yourself, as terrible as it is, you have lots of options, which is sad, but I mean, if you don't have a gun, it doesn't mean you're not going to do the same thing.
Thank you. Do we need any prep time before second speakers? All right then.
You like a day?
Who's up?
Pro speaker 2.
Pro speaker 2. Jack,
Hi.
get on up there, buddy.
Say it, buddy.
Hold on one second, Jack. Whenever you're ready.
So from the speech my parent did, unnecessary death is evidently our main reason why handguns should be banned, as more kids under the age of 19 died from firearms every 3 days in 2010 than the Newton massacre in 2012, which is a big deal. And also, as the crossfire person mentioned, more gun control leads to fewer suicides. Countries like Japan, where according to the Detroit Metro Times, when gun violence killed 3,000 American teenagers, about only 47 dies in Japan. In this scenario, Japan, a well-developed country, which has more than a third of our population, should have around 1,000 deaths, while 1,000 teenage deaths for every 3,000 American teenage deaths. In this case, gun control was what clearly minimized the excessive deaths caused by guns. And according to the California State University, for the cities Vancouver and Seattle, the two cities are similar economically, demographically, and culturally. Crime rates are also similar, except in the category of homicide. Seattle has a significantly larger homicide rate. The non-gun homicide rates are very similar, but the difference lies in the fact that your chances of being murdered with firearm in Seattle are almost 5 times as high as they would be in Vancouver. And the reason why is because Vancouver has stricter gun controls. And they said that Vancouver does not allow concealed weapons and grant handgun permits for sporting and collecting purpose only. And on the other hand, about how the self-defense will come into place, the acts of self-defense are rarely put into practice, as only 99.2% of the victims do defend. Only 0.8% of the victims do actually defend themselves with a firearm. In the study case in Atlanta, where there was 198 cases, it was found by the family dwellings that the invader was twice as likely to obtain the victim's gun than the victim himself use it as in the act of self-defense. So in this case, guns will not be used in self-defense, but rather as a mean to harm the victim.
Are you finished? Okay.
Who's up?
Having guns is a constitutional right that can't be taken away. Some may argue that the Second Amendment can be interpreted in different ways, but that's no longer the case. After the Supreme Court ruled that citizens had a right to bear arms, there's no question as to what the true meaning of the Second Amendment is. What the Supreme Court rules is what is true for the rest of the country. And not everyone can get guns anyways. People with certain criminal records, mental illnesses, and drug addictions can't get guns. Law requires that licensed gun dealers conduct background checks in order to make sure that the person they're selling the gun to is allowed to have one. People are less likely to assault someone who they think has a gun. Therefore, owning a gun could already be protecting you before you even have to use it. Furthermore, guns are possibly the greatest self-defense mechanism. There are so many cases in which having a gun saved people's lives and homes. In North Dakota, a senior citizen awoke to a loud noise in her house, and she alerted her 82-year-old husband, who armed himself and went downstairs to find a burglar. He held the man at gunpoint until the police arrived. In a similar instance, a man who heard something outside of his house after his daughter left for school one morning went outside to find two men bothering his daughter. He fired a warning shot but it didn't scare them off. One of the guys had his daughter in a chokehold and held a pistol at her head while threatening to kill the girl if her father did not back off. While the assailant was dragging the daughter away, some space opened up between the daughter and the guy, allowing the father to shoot the suspect in the stomach and ending the encounter. If he didn't have a gun, he wouldn't have obeyed him, was to save his daughter. And in yet another instance, a pregnant California mom fought off two intruders. Seeing two strange men entering her home in Fortuna, a young pregnant woman pointed a pistol at them and ordered them out. When they refused to leave, she fired on the men, missing them but scared them off. Needless to say, she's thankful she had a gun. Having a gun helped them protect their homes and themselves from burglars and other criminals. Having guns also doesn't equal more deaths. Even though the population of the U.S. is growing, the homicide rate is going down. From 1993 to 2010, homicide rate has gone down 49%. Having less guns does not result in less murders. Some nations with strict gun control laws have substantially higher murder rates than those who do not in general. The 9 European nations with the lowest gun ownership rates have a combined murder rate of 3 times that of the 9 European nations with the highest gun ownership rate. For example, Norway has the highest rate of gun ownership in Western Europe, yet possesses the lowest murder rate. In contrast, Holland's murder rate is nearly the worst, despite having the lowest gun ownership rate in Western Europe. Banning guns doesn't work. If banning guns worked, Washington, D.C. and New York would be the safest cities in the country. Since 1976, it's been illegal in Washington, D.C. to own handguns or keep any type of gun in your home unlocked and fully assembled. However, Washington, D.C. is the murder capital of the United States. For these reasons and many more, guns should not be banned.
Alright, Crossfire with Carly, so you should probably say it.
With me?
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm wrong. Jack and 4B from Disney.
Do we need prep time?
A little bit.
How much time do we want? You guys have used 20 seconds, you guys have used 30 seconds.
2 minutes until?
Yeah,
Yeah.
20 seconds? That's 20 seconds.
They're like state-of-the-art athletic facilities, indoor bowling and golf.
Stay focused, Judge.
I can take a break.
No breaks,
Like the
no
last
breaks.
3
Oh my God,
days.
try to be me when I have to watch 7 of these in a day. Something ridiculous like that. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Judge, ready?
Yeah.
There's 4 minutes on the clock.
Of those 99.2% people who did not protect themselves with the gun, what percentage of them owned a gun as they were being attacked and being the victim?
Well, in this case, we did not have the data, but we're assuming since this is a country with more than 300 million guns in citizens' hands, so it's pretty much a pretty big proportion.
And then, how do you think the increase of firearms in the house, if one firearm were in everyone's house, how would that affect the burglary rate and crime rate in homes?
I'd say it wouldn't help as much, but I would even say it might provoke the burglars to own a gun just to defend himself, technically, when he enters a home to steal.
How do you view the influence of states where they shall issue, which is they will issue people private ownership of a handgun? How do you think that will correlate to the amount of murders that there are each year's assaults and robberies?
I'd say the crime rates, the crime rates will be the same, the death rates will be higher in states where they allow handguns. Because like we mentioned in the case of Vancouver versus Seattle, the two cities are very similar and the crime rates are similar, but the only difference was the homicide rates with the guns in Seattle.
And then, do you think the United States could act like Norway, which has the highest percentage of gun ownership of any country in the world, where they would have the lowest murder rate?
Well, that is hard to say, but one of the reasons I thought it was because probably Norway has like way less population than people does, and it's got a different economic structure that's possible too.
And then, do guns kill people or do people kill people?
Well, guns are what help people kill people.
And then, how has the murder rates, what was the effect of the murder rates on states who have a stricter gun control laws?
Can you say that again?
So what was the, states who have more strict gun control, how is that related to their murder rates?
Well, states with stricter gun control does have less gun rates. Less deaths caused by guns.
Okay, you're finished. Prep time, anyone? We're good?
In your speech, you described that the background checks allow people who have mental illness or problems to not get guns. But how do you address the fact that Adam Lanza had Asperger's syndrome and he was the murderer in the Sandy Hook shooting, and then the Virginia Tech shooting murderer also had mental illness? How do you address that?
Well, in both those cases, they weren't the ones purchasing the guns. So in that case, it's not like the system failed someone because somebody who didn't have a mental illness was the one purchasing the gun.
But because the reason that those criminals have the chance to steal the guns is because a gun was near them. But do you think that if we completely eliminated guns in people's lives, would those incidents be reduced?
I don't think so, because if somebody really has a motive, if somebody really wants to do something, like if they wanted to kill those people, they would have found a way to do it no matter what. And just the fact that somebody in their family had a gun that made it possibly easier for them to get, they still could have gotten one anyways without that happening.
Okay, and for your self-defense arguments, both of the cases that you mentioned stated that the first shot they fired did not scare the criminal away, and it was the second shot that they fired that scared the criminal away. So can you argue that handguns aren't as effective in so much like scaring the criminal than actually killing? And also because the civilians who actually own the guns aren't really trained in using guns, aren't they more likely to use the guns in the wrong way and then escalate the situation rather than helping the situation?
Well, a civilian can be trained to use a gun, and when somebody purchases a gun, yeah, you don't know if they're going to be trained, but a lot of people are, and even when they aren't, in those cases, they weren't trying to use the gun to kill somebody, they were trying to scare them off, and, but they had to result in, continually shooting, but in those cases, nothing bad happened to them.
But it's only in those cases. What about the other
Well,
situations where it did get worse?
you mean like accident, like, what do you mean?
Like, you only mentioned a few cases where the guns helped in saving the victims from the criminals, but what about so many other cases where it didn't help and it just made the situation more deadly?
Well, I don't see how protecting yourself could make the situation worse.
For example, you shoot the other person and then they shoot back, and then you miss, but then they shoot back and then they didn't.
Well, if you're gonna shoot at them, you feel like you're in danger of your life anyways. So you feel like that, I mean, they could possibly do that to you anyways, whether you shoot or not, so you might as well take a chance of trying to defend yourself.
Okay,